For years, I couldn't look away from crime stories. I'd binge documentaries, drawn to the way investigators sifted through chaos and clues to uncover hidden truths. But over time, the intrigue shifted. It wasn't just about the crime anymore, it was about the people, the lives affected, the voices ignored, the tragedies that never made the front page. I started to notice a pattern. Some stories were told over and over again. Others, just as devastating, just as important, were pushed aside. That's why I'm here. Welcome to LGBT Crime Files. If you're returning, thank you for your continued support. If you're new, I'm glad you're here. This channel exists to amplify the stories that too often get overlooked, especially those within the LGBTQ+ community. These are not just stories of violence, they are stories of resilience, identity, injustice, and humanity. And today, we're sharing the story of Sameera Krishnan, a vibrant, courageous transgender woman from Malaysia whose murder shocked a nation and exposed deep flaws in a justice system that failed to protect her. Sameera Krishnan was 26 years old when she was murdered, but her story began long before that tragic day. She lived in Kuantan, a city on the east coast of Malaysia, a country where transgender people face severe discrimination, criminalization, and violence. To be openly transgender in Malaysia is to live with courage in the face of hostility. Sameera had that courage. She lived her life authentically, even when doing so came with serious risk. She was a florist, and not just any florist. Her flower shop was an extension of her spirit, artistic, expressive, and full of life. People who came to her shop weren't just buying flowers, they were meeting someone who had the ability to transform the ordinary into something beautiful. Sameera's arrangements were known for their vibrance, and so was she. She wasn't just a business owner, she was a performer. At local events, Sameera would sing and dance, bringing joy to her community. She lit up every room she entered. She was, by all accounts, someone who brought people together, someone who lived boldly and gave generously. But her life was not without trauma. In 2015, Sameera was abducted and sexually assaulted by several men. This wasn't just an act of violence, it was an attempt to strip her of her dignity, her autonomy, and her courage. But Sameera didn't stay silent. She reported the crime. She pursued justice, even as the system offered little support. At the time of her death, she was preparing to testify in court against her attackers. That decision, to speak out, to hold her rapists accountable, was an act of bravery, but it came at a cost. On February 23, 2017, Sameera was abducted again. According to reports, she had gone to a dental clinic in Kuantan around 3:30 a.m. It was there that several men forced her into a car. Just hours later, her body was found in an alley. She had been shot 3 times and slashed multiple times, a brutal, targeted killing. The violence was not random. Sameera was not a bystander. She was not caught in the crossfire of some unrelated crime. She was deliberately targeted. Her murder shocked Malaysia, not only because of its brutality, but because it highlighted how vulnerable transgender individuals are and how little protection they often receive. Authorities arrested 5 men in connection with her murder. All 5 were brothers, and they were known to have prior criminal records. The details surrounding their motive were never fully revealed in public records. But what was clear to activists and advocates was this: Sameera's murder was not treated with the urgency and seriousness it deserved. Investigations moved slowly, witnesses were reportedly not thoroughly interviewed, and the justice system, the same system Sameera had turned to for protection, had once again failed her. Sameera's death became a turning point. Advocacy organizations like Justice for Sisters, a Malaysian group dedicated to transgender rights, stepped up. They called for transparency, they called for reform, they demanded that Sameera's murder not be swept under the rug, and they reminded the world that her death was part of a much larger crisis. In Malaysia, transgender individuals are often criminalized under Sharia laws. Many live in fear of being arrested simply for expressing their gender identity. Violence against trans people is rarely prosecuted as hate crime, and in many cases, it's never prosecuted at all. Sameera's case sparked public outcry. For the first time, mainstream media gave attention to the violence transgender people endure in Malaysia. People across the country and around the world began to ask hard questions. Why was she left unprotected? Why wasn't her earlier assault enough to trigger lasting legal action? Why are trans lives treated as disposable? Sameera's story became a symbol not just of what had been lost, but of what needed to change. Her murder was heartbreaking, but it also galvanized a movement. Advocates used her name as a rallying cry for justice. They demanded better police training, stronger legal protections for trans people, and a cultural shift in how Malaysia treats its LGBTQ+ citizens. In the aftermath of her death, Samira's family, friends, and community refused to let her memory fade. They spoke about her warmth, her kindness, her determination. They shared stories about her flower shop, her performances, and her laughter. They reminded the world that she was more than a victim, she was a sister, a daughter, a friend, and a fighter. There is still no official confirmation that Samira's murder was classified as a hate crime, and while suspects were arrested, the public has not received full clarity or closure. But one thing remains clear: Samira deserved better. She deserved safety, protection, and justice, and she deserved to be alive. Organizations like Justice for Sisters continue to fight in her name. They provide legal support to transgender individuals, advocate for policy changes, and raise awareness about the discrimination and violence LGBTQ+ Malaysians face every day. Sameera Krishnan's story is not over. It lives on in every person who continues to fight for a world where being transgender doesn't mean living in fear. It lives on in the voices that speak her name, and in the movements that demand change. So I ask you, what will you do to ensure Samira is never forgotten? Will you speak up? Will you challenge hate? Will you help make a world where every trans person is safe to live openly and freely? If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe. Help us spread Samira's story. Help us make sure she is never erased. Because remembering her isn't just about honoring the past, it's about protecting the future. This has been LGBT Crime Files.